Hello and welcome along to another Weatherquest farming forecast. Now, at this time of the year, there's always a little bit of uncertainty in the forecast because of tropical troublemakers. And by that, we're referring to tropical storms or indeed hurricanes if they grow strong enough over the Atlantic. So this is just model output for this coming weekend. Don't take the positioning or the detail too literally. These are very fickle features. They're very difficult to get the forecast right, both for their intensity and also their track where they're going to go. Now, unlike our areas of low pressure, which tend to be quite large, can cover much of the North Atlantic, tropical storms and hurricanes are very small, they're very compact. They carry a lot of energy, but in a relatively small area, and that makes them very difficult to be simulated by the models, and then what sort of impact that may have down the road across the Atlantic and indeed into northwestern parts of Europe as well. Now, this time of the year, as I say, August through September and into early October, it's sort of the peak of the hurricane season, and so these will dictate how the forecast plays out in the weeks and indeed a couple of months to come. So expect some changes, I suspect, in the longer range part of the forecast over the next few weeks, depending on how many of these systems we see. It's been a very active season so far. We've already had 17 named storms. And so it's something to bear in mind. It's quite an active Atlantic season, which means maybe there could well be more uncertainty than usual in the forecast over the next 3 to 4 weeks, if not into October as well. And those systems ultimately start to impact the jet stream as well. A lot of energy, as I say, in a very small area, and as that interacts with the jet stream, it can cause some havoc. This is the jet stream at the moment, so quite an active pattern actually running its way across the Atlantic towards the UK. And running this forward, there's not a great deal of change really. You notice little ridges, high pressure building in temporarily, then you get a little trough coming in, digging up a deeper area of low pressure. Still though, quite a zonal jet here. You can see running all the way out of Canada, big trough developing here across the Atlantic. Now by the weekend, what we're expecting is as this trough digs down, what you find on the flip side, a bit like a seesaw really, is one side goes down, the other side comes up, lifting north of the UK and allowing high pressure to build in through the weekend and perhaps into the early part of next week as well. So that's how things are likely to play out over the next few days. But with this targeting right across the western side of Scotland, this very strong flow bringing very moist tropical air up, we could well see quite a bit of rain later this week in western Scotland. We'll talk about that in just a few moments. So take it day by day. We'll start off with Wednesday. Now, this is a cold front here, sliding its way southeastwards. It's a very weak feature on Wednesday, so starting dry, still fairly humid and muggy in the southeast, but through the day this feature will sink southeastwards, a few spots of rain, nothing more than that really, and then we get into a slightly fresher northwesterly flow coming in behind it. So things will brighten up, it'll turn a bit cooler, maybe a few showers into Scotland for example, but high pressure out west trying to build in as we go through Wednesday night and into Thursday. It does mean though Thursday will start on a fairly chilly note, but notice many places dry on Wednesday night into Thursday morning. But it does start to change again. As I said, that ridge starts to retreat a little bit to the south. Notice it's retreating to the southwest, allowing these frontal systems to come back into western Scotland, but never really making it much further south. So I think for much of central and southern Britain, Thursday and Friday, both probably dry days. Chilly starts, a bit of mist and fog around. That will clear. Most places will then have a dry day with some sunny spells, but there will be further rain and showers coming into northern areas. More isobars here with stronger winds as well, courtesy of low pressure off towards the north. Now as we head into the weekend, as I say, there could be quite a bit of rain developing in western Scotland. This is a deepening low coming in now, and that's going to bring a lot of rain, piling it onto those western hills at times through the weekend. Still though, dry in the south. High pressure running its way eastwards here, so that should keep many central and southern areas dry through the weekend. The high eventually repositioning to the east of the UK, which in turn will then draw more of a southerly flow as we head into next week, and therefore bringing warmer air back up from the south. So it's likely to turn a bit warmer, we think, into the beginning of next week. But really the rainfall will be the big feature through the weekend across western Scotland. Not just wet, also quite windy. Gusts of 50-55 miles an hour are certainly possible on some of the exposed headlands in western Scotland. But it's the rainfall, this map here, just an idea really of how much rain could fall between now, Tuesday, through to the end of the weekend, so midnight on this coming Monday, as you can see here, and a lot of rain piling up onto the western side of Scotland. Now some of this will be falling in the next few days, but a lot of this will be falling Saturday into Sunday, over 100 millimetres in some places in just a couple of days, for example, whereas further south, barely a drop of rain at all across many southern and eastern parts of the UK. And you can see some of the western hills of Wales into parts of northwest England also getting a little bit of rain, but certainly nowhere near as much as we're likely to see across western Scotland over the next few days or so. As I say, there will be some chilly nights as well, although generally speaking, most places will still be frost-free at this time of the year. If you're trying to get some spraying done, of course you want light winds for that and dry conditions, and there should be plenty of that on offer across more southern parts of the UK. As you can see the green shading here, this is where conditions are dry and light winds as well, and that will fluctuate and come and go through the week, but actually quite a bit of spraying potential in the south. Further north though, with more isobars, more wind, certainly by the weekend, spraying is going to be quite tricky, I think, especially once that rain sets in across western Scotland too. And it's possible the eastern side of Scotland could actually see very little rain through the weekend because of the rain shadow effect going on here as well. Now for the beginning of next week, as I say, our high pressure starts to scoot off to the east, so it's just drifting off to the nearby continent. More of a southerly flow then developing, or a southeasterly, which should bring in some warmer air. So actually Monday and possibly Tuesday, temperatures will be in the mid or even high 20s. It's not out of the question we might get close to 30 very locally on Tuesday, depending on how much sunshine we get, but also depending on how quickly this area of low pressure to the west starts to approach us from the Atlantic. And it is a big question mark towards midweek onwards as to how quickly this starts to advance its way in. So initially it's possible we may get some thundery bursts of rain coming up from the south ahead of it into more southwestern parts of the UK potentially, but as I say, a lot of uncertainty at this stage. I wouldn't want to pin too much detail down on that, but it is possible later next week, Wednesday, Thursday onwards, this may well work its way towards the UK. But equally, it could stay out west and scoot off to the north and just grazing some western parts of the UK and keeping the further east you are somewhat drier. So a lot of uncertainty about the second half of next week. The beginning of the week's fairly confident. Later in the week, there's a bit more of a question mark as to how things will play out. So what we tend to do when we got a lot of uncertainty is look at some of the ensemble data where we run the same computer model multiple times, in the case of this table here, 50 times, to try and come up with an idea of the possible solutions going forward in time, and where they all cluster together, then we have high confidence. Now what this table shows, we've shown it many times, is the chance of having a dry day on each of the days coming up in the next month or so at these different locations around the UK. Now the browns basically suggest where you've got a more likely chance of staying dry, and the greens here indicating where you're more likely to see rain at times. So you can see a lot of brown showing up initially, high confidence, so darker brown showing in the next few days across many central and southern parts of the UK. But notice it's these Scotland and Northern Ireland locations that are getting the rain here through the end of this week and indeed into the weekend as well. Now there is a slight signal here, these couple of days here, Tuesday, Wednesday, where we get a bit more green showing up. We also lose those dark browns and they turn more 50-50 chance of being dry or wet. So there is a signal, second half of next week, of a more widespread risk of some rain or showers, but obviously difficult to say exactly how much rain or where the showers will turn up. Better chance of staying dry for longer, probably across parts of East Anglia and southeast England in this case. And then beyond that, well, it's still not a massively strong signal either side. It's very 50-50 here through the middle part of the month. And then towards the end of the month, the greens start coming back more widely, which sort of indicates a more unsettled pattern becoming more established for the last third of September, if you like, and into early October. But still though, brown showing up here. So still a chance, actually, there could still be quite a bit of dry weather at times the further southeast you are across the UK, while the northwest turns broadly more unsettled during the latter stages of the month. So a bit of a question mark about this middle month period as to how things will play out, and then it does look more changeable and more unsettled, we think, later on in the month. In terms of temperature, one way to look at it is to look at the what we call the 850 millibar temperature. This is a measure of the temperature of the air about a mile above the ground. This is picked out here for Oxford. So again, each of these grey lines is a different computer model. The red line here is the average of all of those to give us a trend. And the dashed black line, that's the average for the time of the year, climatology. So what you can see here is as that cold front comes through on Wednesday, we get a shot of slightly cooler air coming in. So temperatures fall just a little bit below average second half of this week. But notice this big bulge developing here by late Sunday and through into the beginning of next week. That's where we're going to see that very warm air coming up from the south, and those temperatures responding both by day and by night. And then later on in the week, those temperatures start to come back down. Now the average keeps it close to this dashed line. In other words, temperatures sort of near normal for the time of the year through the rest of the month really. But there is a huge spread here. Some of them are going for some pretty chilly air coming in. Others actually keep the warm air for quite a lot longer as well. So a lot of uncertainty for the second half of the month. The more likely scenario is temperatures fall back closer to normal, but as I say, it could deviate either way really at this time of the year, and it's hard to really pin down that detail when you've got these tropical troublemakers we talked about earlier on, which could cause some sort of havoc in a forecasting sense going forward in time. So if you are trying to plan ahead, the best advice really is to keep in touch with our forecasters. We're available every day from 6 in the morning through till 6 in the evening on our forecast hotline here, and we're here to answer your questions and hopefully give you some guidance over the coming days and weeks ahead. So looking at Europe as a bigger picture really for next week, taking us through the 14th to the 20th of September. Now right now here, this red shading indicating higher than normal pressure. So generally centred to the east, eventually to the north of the UK. At this time of the year, we're getting into autumn, of course, we often get deep lows coming in off the Atlantic. So when you get these reds showing, that just indicates the low pressure systems are a lot less frequent than they would normally be for the time of the year. And low pressure, more frequent than normal to the west of Biscay. So what that would do is give you more of a southeasterly flow a lot of the time. It would mean a lot of the rain probably focused towards the southwest, and the further north and east you are, overall, you would tend to be drier. Of course, this is an average for 7 days, not for a particular day per se. But you can see on the temperature side of things, very warm conditions likely to become established across Western Europe into parts of Central and Southern Europe as well. Generally cooler relative to average the further northeast you go across Europe. And in terms of rainfall, well, it's likely to be quite wet at times through Iberia into Western France with that low pressure close by, some thundery bursts of rain at times, whereas across many central and eastern parts of Europe, below average rainfall in the forecast for week 2. Now by week 3, still a weak signal here of some slightly higher than normal pressure, or the low pressures not as deep as they would normally be. Notice this sort of cut-off low sitting over the Mediterranean. That's going to give some quite unsettled conditions here. Now cooler than average in Eastern Europe showing up for this week, but the west still near normal, maybe slightly above normal, but generally close to average temperatures here. And in terms of rainfall, well, quite a strong signal for southern parts here through the Mediterranean of quite frequent rain and showers and thunderstorms here, giving you some pretty wet conditions. For the UK, it's near, slightly below normal in the west, slightly above normal further east. Now that doesn't necessarily mean dry in the west, it just means because you normally see a lot of rain at this time of the year, you won't be seeing potentially quite so much as normal, whereas the east could see slightly more than normal. But again, these are weak signals, it's not a particularly strong indication either way. Then for the end of September into early October, notice the redder colours have shifted off towards Iceland. Quite often low pressure is here at this time of the year, so with red colours here, that indicates the lows won't be quite so deep as normal. In other words, things becoming a little bit more blocked perhaps, lower than normal pressure across Scandinavia as well. So that's an interesting signal here, some slightly cooler conditions developing across Scandinavia and Eastern Europe in the current forecast, and perhaps into parts of the UK. But as I say, a long way off, and this probably will change. Quite a strong signal for wetter than average conditions across southeast Europe during this spell, whereas it becomes somewhat drier across western parts or southwestern parts of Europe in particular. Notice a signal for slightly above average rainfall across the UK as well. So in general, it's often dry in the south for the next week and a half or so, but there will be rain at times in the north, especially this weekend where it will be quite windy and very wet in western parts of Scotland. Chilly nights, especially in the south for the next few days, and then becoming warmer for the early part of next week. But really after mid-month, the second half of next week onwards, there is quite a bit of uncertainty. We've tried to highlight some of the trends, but do expect the forecast could change a bit just because of the tropical situations going on in the Atlantic at this time of the year, which is inevitable in the autumn season. So that's how things are looking. You can keep up to date with the latest day-by-day forecast by following us on social media and, of course, our updated podcast on our website for East Anglia. Bye for now.